Welcome to Tentative Title with Tim. This is a podcast about creativity, about process, about filmmaking, and about screenwriting. Welcome everybody back to the podcast. Once again, wherever you happen to be in the world, whenever you're listening to this, I hope your life is going well, that you're being creative, that you're doing the things that you want to do, that you're telling the stories you want to tell. That is, part of the human experience. That is what makes life worth living, is being able to take those thoughts and those feelings inside and to be able to share them with other human beings, and to understand that we are not alone in this world, that we are on the same, having the same kind of experiences that everybody else is having, and to find comfort in that, and to know that, we're all here trying to figure it out. We're all here trying to do the best that we can with the options that, we think that we have and that are presented to us. So, if you were expecting a live stream last week, I was not able to do that because I'm currently in post on my feature film, and I had to do some stuff with that. And Tuesday afternoon was seemed to be the only time that I could make that happen, and so I had to do that. That was more of a priority than live streaming. So if you showed up and I wasn't there, I apologize, but the Tuesday live streams I plan to do every week, unless there's something that comes up like last week. So with that out of the way, let's talk about what I wanted to talk about today, which is hope. I think hope is one of the elements of a story that it's hard to kind of pinpoint exactly like where hope in a story lies, because of the fact that there can be some really depressing, stark, dark, twisted stories that still have this sense of hope in them. And I bring this up because I recently rewatched the Shawshank Redemption, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's a great film. Unfortunately, there's been some parody of that film over the years, and so there are some spoilers that might already be out there in the world that you've come across if you watched like anything that's parody, that that references pop culture in any like shape or form. But if you haven't, I still watch it. Still watch this film anyway, because it's such a great film. It's so good. But as I was rewatching it, I hadn't watched it in. It's been decades. Like it has been a long time. The last time I remember watching this film was back when I was in high school, or maybe like early college. But other than that, it's been a while, and so I decided to rewatch it because it was a great film, and I wanted to. I felt like I needed to refill my cup, so to speak, when it came to storytelling, when it came to the stories that I grew up with, that I loved growing up, and I just wanted to I just wanted to revisit that and see if it held up, and it does. And it's like I said, it's a great film. It's starring Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins, and it centers around this character Andy Dufresne, who is sent to prison because he's convicted of killing his wife and her lover. And so, and this is like, no spoiler or anything, but that's the first part of the film, and then he gets sent to prison where he kind of has to adjust to life, inside, and he gets to meet Morgan Freeman's character. His nickname is Red, and he's called Red throughout the film. But he starts to have a friendship with him, and like he ends up spending a good chunk of his life inside these prison walls and seeing, people like going through there, but most of it is just he's around the same set of guys throughout the decades that he's there, and through that he tries to find ways in which he can occupy his mind, in which he can occupy his time. And the main theme, which he does call out, in a there's a conversation that happens later in the film where, he basically talks about, the only thing you have is hope, and if you don't have hope, you have nothing. You might as well die if you don't have hope. And I watching it as a teenager, I thought, oh well, yeah, that's a great line. It's a great speech about hope. That this is very compelling. But knowing now and experiencing so many things in my own life, I realized that even though this movie can be very depressing and very just very real and very raw, that ultimately it's about this character going through all of those trials and still coming out on the other side hopeful. And I was like, something clicked in me where I thought, I think this idea of hope has been in a lot of it's what I gravitated towards when I was younger. There was this sense of like, no matter how bad the situation was, no matter how how many things you threw at a character, that as an audience member you always knew that they were going to find some way out of it. Like there was never this hopelessness or this helplessness. There was always this call to action, this idea that there was a challenge to be overcome. And I think that's like why a lot of these films have stuck around and have become classics, is because there always was this sense of hope. Like you could put the character into a situation, you could have terrible things happen to these characters, but at the core of the character, you understood that there was no way that they were going to be giving up. Like there was this gumption, this a sense that like they were after something and nothing was going to get in their way. And I think at a certain point we kind of lost that, and we tried to inject so much of the real world into the stories that we ended up becoming what I think a lot of people call like the postmodern era, where just everything is just this kind of nihilism, this what's the point of doing anything because we're all gonna die, what's the point of like even trying to accomplish anything because it's all gonna be taken away, or it's all gonna just turn to shit. There was I think at a certain point, and I don't know where this started to happen, but we ended up in a place where reality, we wanted more reality in our films, and by putting more reality, we had to put more flaws, and we had to put more of our heroes being deconstructed and being turned into like the characters that we could relate to because we were just as screwed up as they were. And I don't exactly know like what happened with that. I think maybe in the US especially, we were just so we were so kind of depressed as a nation that it just everything seemed like we were in this quagmire of things going wrong, finding out that our actual heroes were not that great, just tons of things happening in the culture and in society that started to really reflect in the art that we were making. And, granted, when the Shawshank Redemption came out, it was in the 90s. We had not gone through 9/11 or the war in Iraq or, any of these global, wars that we were, that at least in the U.S., we started to kind of, our eyes were opened up to like, oh, there's a, hey, there's a world out there. There's more going on besides what is, happening on, in our movies and TV. So, but I because of that, we just stopped, we stopped understanding why we needed hope in our characters and in our films and I don't want to say that everything was like that, because there were plenty of shows and movies that came out that had that kind of hope, but I don't know if society rewarded those those things, because everybody was just so worried about what was going on in the world. And I want to say that we're starting to come out of that. It feels like maybe we're turning a bit. We're becoming more of a creative, like industry, that we're kind of like we've gotten we've gotten to the point where we're really seeking some creative stories, some new creative stories, and it's not to say that that there aren't there aren't corporations running studios, because there definitely are, and they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and they're gonna try to make profit in any way they can, but I also think that they're gonna come to a point, just like they did in the in the 60s, where it just became stagnant, and they started to really try to find the independent spirit, the independent filmmakers out there that had creativity, that were able to tell a story, and then they were able to kind of trust in the artist to make something great, so that they they could continue to do what they do best, but I'm getting a bit off track, because I'm talking about stories and I'm talking about hope, but it also plays into that, because I think as well that there's been so much in what has been produced that has felt so depressing and felt like there's no end in sight to the bad things that can happen in the world, that there is going to come a point, and I don't know if it's going to happen in the next year or if it's going to happen in the next 5 years, where those positive stories are going to come back, where we're going to have characters that are really that are for something, that stand for a cause, that are really like steadfast in what they want, and their loyalties to what they believe in, and with that, I really hope that it's not something where we consider certain traits to be connected to a certain political party, because I don't believe that at all. I believe that there's hope regardless of whatever side of the aisle you're on, that you still have stories in which you can have somebody who seems to be a conservative character be a very positive character, be a very uplifting character. So I just think that like we're coming back to that, and and it doesn't have to be like a story where it's like, well, okay, everything has to be good and proper, and we can't have anything bad happen. It's like, no, it's not about that. It's about having a character who is developed enough where that no matter what is thrown at them, that they're not going to fold, they're not going to compromise their their ideals. They're not going to compromise who they know themselves to be. I think that's why, like, Superman was such a a character that has like stuck around for a while. I mean, there's the argument that he's a Boy Scout, and he is, but there's some good in that because of the fact that that he lives by a set of ideals that he's not going to compromise on. Now, you can say different interpretations have changed that over the years, and that also plays into what I think has happened. Where we're taking our heroes and we're saying, well, if this hero lived in the real world, this is how they would approach, this is how they would react to it, because that's the way that I would react to it as the person who's writing the story. And that's not fair to the character, because the character is the character, and they have to live within the parameters of who they are, of what's been been established. Now, you can argue that, okay, you have to allow for an artist to take a character and have a different interpretation. And it's like, sure, you can do that. But it doesn't mean that the audience is going to accept it. It doesn't mean that the audience is going to like it, or that your interpretation of that character is going to stand the test of time. If you already have a character who's been around for 100 years and you decide you're going to change that character, then there's going to be some blowback. There's going to be people who are not going to be happy, and that version of that character may just, it may be like popular for the short time that the show or the movie is out, and then it'll be quickly forgotten, or if anything, mocked in hindsight as like a really bad idea. So, all right, let me get back to hope. So, how do you create a character that has hope? How do you create a story that has hope? I brought up the idea of the Shawshank Redemption because I think there's a stark contrast between the situation of the character and the character of Andy Dufresne. He's not set up necessarily as a hopeful character necessarily, but there is a sense that that he understands himself enough to know that like he can make it through anything. And that's really interesting because we're not shown anything at the beginning. We're just shown that he's on trial for killing his wife and her lover, and we're given some flashbacks of him sitting outside the house, and he has a gun, and he's drinking, and so he's drunk, and we're cutting back to the courtroom where he's retelling his story, and so that's all we know. We know that he's convicted of this thing. We can guess that through this, that he really loved his wife, and he was very hurt that she had cheated on him. So we see him be brought to this this prison, and then he's in his cell the first night, and there's a sense that he's strong because he's not like there's this whole game that the inmates play, where they try to break the new people who come into the prison, and they place bets on who's going to break, and we see that like Andy Dufresne is strong enough that he doesn't break the first night, that he stays in his cell, he stays quiet, and there's this sense that there's maybe something special about him, that he believes something about himself, or maybe that he's depressed enough that he's like, yeah, well, this is this is my life right now. I'm serving a life sentence. I just have to accept it. And maybe that was the hope in the whole thing, is that he accepts the fact that he's going to be in jail for the rest of his life. But then as you grow to learn more about him, you get to see that he has a lot of like he has a lot of interests. He knows a lot about how this like systems work, and how he is able to use his situation to his advantage, and that makes it so he's popular with the with the people around him. He starts to become popular with the guards. He starts to become popular with the warden. He like if you know anything about the Bible, I mean it in a way it kind of sounds like a loose interpretation of the story of Joseph and the Pharaoh, how he gained favor from, he was in prison, and then he like eventually became like Pharaoh himself, or like he was able to move his way from being in the prison to being in a position of like actual power, and that this is kind of in the same vein, but even with that, you can see like with this character that he knows who he is, and no amount of abuse or being locked up is like compromises that. He does have setbacks. He does have a lot of things that happen that you could see that it could break him, but he keeps going. He keeps trying to find ways to occupy himself. He keeps trying to find ways in which he can, in a way, could like benefits like the people around him. And that actually reminds me of another film that is kind of in the same vein. There's an older film called Cool Hand Luke, starring Paul Newman, and it's kind of the same thing. He gets arrested, he gets thrown in prison. There's this warden that like is a very hard ass, and his entire the entire point of the story is that he's just trying to find ways to occupy his time, and so he does things like having like an egg eating contest, or he finds ways that he can like try to escape, only knowing that he's going to be like caught. But that's the whole fun, not fun, but that's the way that he kind of keeps himself like really occupied, and he gets himself, he starts to like box with like with some of the inmates, and he's just constantly trying to do stuff so that he's not sitting around thinking about his situation. He's constantly moving, constantly trying to just keep busy, essentially. So there's a lot of hope in that story as well. And like I said, I don't exactly know why we stopped putting characters that we can, like, you don't aspire to be Andy Dufresne. You don't aspire to be the Paul Newman character in like Cool Hand Luke. Like they are both felons. They're both in prison. Their situation is terrible. You don't wish that on anybody. So you're not meant to want to be these guys. But what you are meant to do is to look at the way they respond to adversity, the way they are, the way that they respond to the things that are thrown at them. That in itself, that is what you're supposed to take away from these stories. And not to say that you're supposed to take these lessons, but there are lessons there. There's this lesson that no matter how bad things get, like you can still have hope in your situation. You can still do something to try to make things better. That you can that there's always a way in which you can just make things better. Essentially, I mean, I know I've repeated myself, but yeah, like, but do we get that in modern, culture, in modern movies and television? Do we get that? Do we have a character that when we see them on screen, we feel that, like, no matter what is thrown at them, that they're going to survive, that they're going to make it out? Do we get that? And I want to say that there are probably some examples out there that I haven't come across or that I can't think of at the moment. But I've also seen a lot of stuff that doesn't, that they lean into the nihilism. They lean into everything is terrible and there's nothing you can do to change it, and what's the point of life, and you might as well just die, kind of thing. Like that's the message I sometimes get watching some of the the stuff that comes out today. And or on on the other hand, it's just like, oh yeah, things are terrible, but there's going to be somebody who's going to save you. It's like, well, that's not true either. Like you gotta you gotta take some personal responsibility. You gotta find a way in which to make your own situation better. You gotta find a way in which you can make other people's lives better. That's really the best thing you can do, and to watch these characters learn how to do that, and to actually succeed, and even though it takes a long time. Like, so one of the things that happens in Shawshank is that like Andy really wants to start a library. Well, there's like a small library that's there in the prison, and so he starts this letter writing campaign to get funds to make a library, to have a bigger library with the not just like these old magazines and old books, but to actually like to make a big space where you can like listen to records, and like people can get their GEDs and stuff like that. Like there's all this building of like like the people in the prison need this, because their lives need to have something to work towards, and if they're just sitting around in prison, they're just wasting away. And so he starts this letter writing campaign to Congress, or to whatever agency, to get funds to to start this library. And when he finally gets an answer, he checks in like every week. No response. And he writes a letter every week, and he does by the time he gets a response, he's like, oh, this is great. It only took me 6 years. Maybe next time I'll write 2 letters a week. And so, just this attitude of like consistency. And he's like, this really needs to happen. I really need to, I'm going to do this. This is something I've set my mind to. And it took 6 years, but it happened. And then eventually, like, more money comes in, and more donations, come in. And so he's like building this positive thing inside the prison. And just to look at that character trait of not giving up, knowing that what he wants to do is the right thing to do and is going to benefit the people around him. I mean, it's such a positive thing that happens. But he's doing it within a prison where there are terrible things happening, like people are being killed and all this terrible stuff is happening. And he's still like, no, this is going to, fill my time, because I can focus on this, and I won't drive myself crazy, but I can also, put this, I can also benefit the people around me and anybody else who happens to, come through these prison doors. Unfortunately, if they come through the doors, they at least have a resource that they can use to make their lives better. And I don't know. I don't think we get there are stories out there in the real world, and it's great to see those. But like I said, I don't know if we see that actually see those kind of characters anymore, because we're so quick to tear down anything that's positive as creative people, because in a way we kind of as creative people, it's hard to make something, and sometimes we feel extremely terrible about ourselves. We feel just trying to make anything is a hard road, and it can make us jaded. It can make us really just want to lash out with our characters on the page, or in the stuff that we're making, to make things so cynical. And it's like, no, we don't need things to be cynical. Like, you can still have a cynical character, but don't make don't make your story cynical. Or if you want to make it cynical, I'm not going to tell you what to make. I mean, I'm just saying we need positive as well as the negative, and the positive stories are going to last. The ones that say something about like perseverance are going to last. They're always going to last because we always need reminders as human beings to keep going, to always just, even when there are setbacks, just to keep going. Eventually there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Eventually there's going to be a breakthrough. Eventually there's going to be somebody who notices what we're doing and say, I really love what you're doing. I want to make sure that you can keep doing what you're doing. And that's the least that we can ask for is just, but we need those examples of like, you got to keep going. You got to keep doing it. Even when nobody's looking, you got to keep going. You got to keep doing it. So, yeah, guys, I wasn't expecting to get into like this big, like, rally cry, but I think it's really needed because we can be so hard on ourselves as creative people. We can be so just like, you like in our head about like, oh, I can't do this, or what's the point, like so and so, like there's no way that anybody's gonna see this, and just all of the mind games that we play about the quality of work that we are doing, and it really doesn't make any sense because you're already on the winning side if you're making something. If you're attempting to be creative, you're already winning. And so let's like carry that on. Let's make characters that are that people can aspire to, or at least are inspirations to just continue on. So. All right, guys, that's all I got for today. I plan to have a live stream on Tuesday, like I said before, and hope to see you there. We can talk more about, the idea of characters who have hope, or stories that have hope, even if they're seen, on the outside they have the shell of being depressing, that they actually have this glimmer of hope inside of them that we can take with us. But yeah, so I hope to see you there, and then yeah, I will talk to you guys on the next one. If you'd like to connect with me, there is an email for the podcast. It's tentative.title.with.tim.podcast @gmail.com. There's also a Twitter account. The handle is @title_Tim. There's also a Facebook page where you can post questions, or you can connect with me there. Thank you guys for listening. I'll talk to you on the next one.